My daughter secretly took a loan in my name and bought her husband a luxurious house. So I'm Norma, 60 years old, sitting at my kitchen table sipping chamomile tea when my phone chimed with a banking alert. New loan approved, $750,000. My hand trembled, spilling tea onto my faded tablecloth. That signature looked like mine, but I hadn't signed anything. A cold feeling washed over me as I realized someone had accessed my perfect credit score, my financial security, my trust. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're from and hit that like button if you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely. Teaching third graders for 35 years taught me patience, but nothing prepared me for widowhood. When my husband Frank died of pancreatic cancer 5 years ago, I thought that was the worst pain I'd ever experienced. We'd built our modest 3-bedroom home together in Springfield back in the 80s, raised our daughter there, and filled it with memories. Frank had been careful with money, ensuring the mortgage was paid off before his diagnosis. He left me with a decent life insurance policy and our retirement savings. Not wealthy by any means, but comfortable enough that I didn't have to worry about bills. My daughter Stephanie had been my rock during Frank's illness. She's 32 now, with her father's hazel eyes and my auburn hair. Always the sensitive one, she'd sit with Frank for hours, adjusting his pillows, reading him sports magazines, even though she had no interest in baseball. She works as a nurse at Memorial Hospital, compassionate with her patients, just like she was with her father. Stephanie married James 3 years ago in a small ceremony in our backyard. James is tall, always impeccably dressed, with an easy smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He works in finance, or at least that's what he says. From what I gather, he's jumped between investment firms, always chasing the next big opportunity that never seems to materialize. Stephanie supports them mostly on her nursing salary, which isn't much, considering the student loans she's still paying off. I've always been transparent with Stephanie about my finances, maybe too transparent. After Frank died, I showed her where all our important documents were kept: the deed to the house bank statements, investment accounts. I even added her as a beneficiary to everything. No secrets between us, I'd say, and she'd smile, squeezing my hand. Frank had been the one who handled our finances, and having Stephanie's help made me feel secure. Their apartment was small, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Whenever they visited, James would comment on my house. "They sure built them solid back then," he'd say, running his hand along the oak banister Frank had refinished himself. "They don't make houses like this anymore." Stephanie would often mention how they were saving for a down payment, but with housing prices and her student debt, it seemed impossible. Several times I offered to help them with a down payment. $20,000 from my savings wouldn't hurt me, and Frank would have wanted to help them start their lives properly. "No, Mom." Stephanie always refused. "You need that money for your retirement. We'll figure something out." I thought her refusal showed integrity. Now I wonder if it was just part of a larger plan. In the months before everything happened, Stephanie began visiting more frequently. Sometimes she'd come alone, saying James was working late. She'd bring lunch, ask about my garden show, more interest in my daily life than she had in years. One afternoon, she asked for my help filling out insurance forms. "The questions are confusing and you're so good at paperwork, Mom," she said, sliding the documents across my kitchen table. I remember feeling touched that she'd asked for my help, that she still needed her mother for something. I didn't look closely at what I was signing. Why would I? This was Stephanie, my only child, the little girl who cried when butterflies died, who volunteered at animal shelters in high school, who held my hand at Frank's funeral and promised we'd get through it together. How could I have known that, while I was signing what I thought were insurance documents, I was actually co-signing loan applications, that my daughter was setting up the betrayal that would shatter the foundation of trust we'd built over 32 years? But that's the thing about trust. It's like a veil over your eyes, filtering everything you see. And sometimes that veil needs to be ripped away before you can see the truth. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, a crisp white envelope from Atlantic Coast Bank. Not my bank. I almost tossed it with the junk mail, but something, intuition perhaps, or just the official look of it, made me open it. "Thank you for your recent mortgage application," it began. My heart skipped a beat. What mortgage application? I called the bank, immediately clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I'm afraid there must be a mistake," I told the customer service representative. "I haven't applied for any loans." "Let me verify some information, Mrs. Williams," she said in a professional tone. "Your Social Security number, please." I provided it along with my date of birth and address. "Yes, we have an application here processed last month. It was approved for $750,000. "That's impossible," I whispered, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. "I never applied for this loan." "Well, we have all your documentation, including your signature on the application and your excellent credit score. The funds were disbursed last week." After hanging up, I checked my bank accounts. Nothing seemed missing. In fact, everything looked normal. The loan wasn't taken from my accounts. It was opened in my name, using my credit history, my identity. But for what, I went to my home office, where I kept important documents, in a filing cabinet. Frank had always been meticulous about paperwork, a habit I'd maintained after his death. The folders looked slightly disturbed, not quite as neatly arranged as I usually kept them. My hands trembled as I opened the folder containing my identification documents. My passport was there, my Social Security card too, but something felt off. Had these been moved? Then I remembered Stephanie's visits, how she'd ask me to sign insurance papers, warranty extensions, even a petition for her hospital. "Just sign here, Mom. I've filled out the rest." And I signed, never questioning, because this was my daughter, my Stephanie. I found the petition she'd asked me to sign last month. Looking closely at my signature, I realized it was on carbon paper, the kind that transfers your signature to the page beneath. My stomach dropped as the pieces started falling into place. But I still wouldn't believe it. There had to be another explanation. Maybe my identity had been stolen by a stranger. That would be easier to accept than the alternative. I tried calling Stephanie. No answer. I texted, "Need to talk to you about something important. Can you call me?" She replied hours later. "Super busy at work. Can it wait until the weekend?" It could wait. In fact, maybe it needed to wait. I needed time to investigate, to be certain, before I made accusations I couldn't take back. That night I barely slept. Every creak in my old house, every shadow seemed threatening. Had my own child stolen my identity, used my good credit to take out a loan I knew nothing about? What was the money for? And how would this affect me, my credit, my financial security? And so I decided to become the detective in my own life, to follow the paper trail and see where it led. I just never imagined it would lead to my daughter's doorstep. "You're sure you want to pursue this?" asked Martin Geller, the private investigator I'd hired. We were sitting in his small office downtown, the walls lined with filing cabinets, his desk cluttered with papers. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I need to know," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "If someone's stolen my identity, I need to report it." He nodded, not mentioning what we both were thinking, that the evidence pointed to someone close to me, someone who had access to my personal information. "I'll look into the loans, see where the money went. Shouldn't take more than a few days." Those few days were some of the longest of my life. I jumped whenever my phone rang, half expecting it to be Stephanie confessing. I checked my credit report, finding the new mortgage there, in black and white, a massive debt attached to my name that I'd never agreed to. When Martin called to schedule another meeting, his tone told me he'd found something. "I think you should come to the office," he said gently. The folder he placed before me contained property records, loan documents, and several photographs. "The loan was used to purchase this house," he explained, sliding a photo across the desk. It was a beautiful two-story colonial in Oak Ridge Estates, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the county. White columns flanked the entrance, manicured shrubs lined the circular driveway, and large windows gleamed in the sunlight. It looked like something from a magazine or a dream. "It closed last week," Martin continued. $700,000 purchase price, the rest for closing costs and initial furnishings. The property is titled to Stephanie and James Williams. I stared at the document, seeing my daughter's name beside her husband's, feeling like I might be sick. "And the loan, solely in your name. Your signature appears on all the documents." He showed me the paperwork, and there it was, my signature or a reasonable facsimile. "Based on what you've told me about recent interactions, it's likely they used carbon paper to capture your actual signature, then transferred it to these documents. Is that legal?" My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. Martin's expression was grave. "No, Mrs. Williams. That's forgery and fraud. It's a criminal offense." I looked again at the photo of the house my daughter and son-in-law had purchased using my name, my credit without my knowledge or permission. A house they could never afford on their own incomes. A house they'd committed fraud to obtain. "What happens now?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "That depends on what you want to do. You could report this to the police. It's clearly identity theft and fraud. They would investigate, and if what we suspect is true, your daughter and son-in-law could face criminal charges." Criminal charges. My Stephanie in handcuffs in a courtroom, possibly in prison. The thought was unbearable. "Is there another option?" Martin leaned back in his chair. "You could confront them directly, see if there's a way to unwind this transaction before it goes further. But Mrs. Williams," his voice softened, "they've committed a serious crime that could impact your financial future for years. This isn't a misunderstanding or a small mistake." I knew he was right. This was calculated, planned over months of visits and small deceptions. My daughter had looked me in the eye while systematically setting up this betrayal. "I need to talk to a lawyer," I said finally. Jennifer Abrams, the attorney Martin recommended, specialized in financial fraud. In her 15th floor office with views of the city, she laid out my options in clear terms. "You're the victim of identity theft," she explained. "The fact that it was committed by family members doesn't change that. You have every right to report this to law enforcement. And if I do, they would likely be charged with fraud, forgery, and identity theft. These are felonies, Mrs. Williams. They could face significant jail time." I twisted my wedding ring, thinking of Frank, wondering what he would advise. "Is there any way to resolve this without involving the police? She's my only child." Jennifer's expression was sympathetic but firm. "You could try to work out an arrangement privately, but I strongly advise having legal documentation of any agreement. And you should act quickly. Every payment missed on this fraudulent loan damages your credit further." I left her office with a retainer agreement and more questions than answers. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. Report my own daughter to the police. Try to handle it privately. Pretend I never discovered the truth. But as I drove home, passing neighborhoods similar to the one where Stephanie and James had purchased their fraudulent dream home, something shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal crystallized into something harder, more resolved. They had made their choice calculated and cold. Now I would make mine. I stared at the keys in my palm, the keys to a house I supposedly owned but had never seen. The real estate agent had been surprisingly easy to convince. "My daughter and son-in-law handled the purchase for me," I explained over the phone. "I've been ill, you see, but I'm feeling better and would like to see my new home before they move in." "Of course, Mrs. Williams, she replied cheerfully. "The keys are ready for pickup any time." Martin accompanied me, driving his nondescript sedan through the winding roads of Oak Ridge Estates. We passed homes set far back from the street, sheltered by old trees and privacy fences. The kind of neighborhood where neighbors might wave politely, but otherwise mind their business, perfect for a couple living in a house purchased through fraud. "That's it," Martin said, pointing to a white colonial with black shutters. A "sold" sign still stood at the edge of the property. My hands shook as I unlocked the front door. The house smelled of new paint and possibilities. Sunlight streamed through enormous windows onto hardwood floors. To my right, a formal living room with a marble fireplace. To my left, a dining room large enough for a table that could seat 12. Ahead, an open-concept kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than my car. "They've already started moving some things in," Martin observed, pointing to boxes stacked in the corner, and a new leather sectional positioned in the family room. I moved from room to room in a daze. Upstairs, 5 bedrooms each with its own bathroom. The master suite had a sitting area and a bathroom larger than my kitchen at home, with a soaking tub and separate shower. In what appeared to be an office, I found more boxes labeled James, Work, and Stephanie, Important Papers. Without hesitation, I opened them, finding financial documents, clothing catalogs, and a folder labeled House Move-In Schedule. The schedule detailed their plans: movers arriving next Saturday, furniture deliveries throughout the week, a small housewarming the following weekend. They were planning to start their new life in 3 days. In another folder, I found brochures for luxury cars, printouts of vacation destinations, and a list titled Upgrades that included items like pool installation and outdoor kitchen. They weren't just stealing a house. They were planning an entire lifestyle built on fraud. My fraud. Most disturbing of all, I found a folder containing information about my own house, property values in my neighborhood renovation, cost estimates, and a printed email from James to a real estate agent asking about steps to sell a property inherited from a parent. They weren't just planning for their future, they were planning for my absence. They expected to inherit my home after I died and were already making plans to sell it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto an unopened moving box, trying to catch my breath. Martin watched me with concern. "Are you all right, Mrs. Williams?" No, I wasn't all right. I might never be all right again. But I was something else. I was determined. "I know what I'm going to do," I said, standing up. "I'm going to be here when they arrive on Saturday. I want to see their faces when they realize their plan has failed." Martin raised his eyebrows. "Are you sure that's wise? They might react unpredictably." "That's why I'd like you to be nearby," I replied. "Not visible, but close enough to intervene if necessary. And I'm going to ask Jennifer to prepare some paperwork for them to sign." As we locked up the house, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "Mom, big news, call me as soon as you can." I showed the message to Martin, who shook his head in disbelief. "The audacity," he muttered. I called her from the car, putting the phone on speaker. "Mom," Stephanie's voice bubbled with artificial excitement. "You'll never guess what happened. James got an amazing bonus at work, and with our savings, we found a house we can afford. We're moving this weekend." The lie flowed so easily from her that for a moment I almost doubted what I knew to be true. Had I made a mistake? Was there an explanation I hadn't considered? But no. The evidence was overwhelming. My daughter was lying to my face, or at least my ear, without a trace of remorse or hesitation. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I replied, matching her enthusiasm. "I can't wait to see it." "We'll have you over as soon as we're settled," she promised. "Maybe next weekend. We're thinking of having a small housewarming." "Actually," I set an idea forming, "I'd love to bring over a housewarming gift when you arrive. What time will you be there on Saturday?" There was a slight pause. "Oh, around noon, I think. The movers are coming at 11. "Perfect. I'll see you then. And Stephanie, I'm so happy for you both. This is quite an achievement." As I ended the call, I caught Martin's eye. He looked impressed. "You missed your calling, Mrs. Williams. You should have been an actress." "No," I replied, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I'm just a mother who's about to teach her child a very difficult lesson about consequences." Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather realtors dream about when showing luxury homes. Clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, temperatures in the mid-70s. I arrived at the house at 10:30, letting myself in with my key. Jennifer, my attorney, would arrive at 11:30, giving me time alone with Stephanie and James before introducing legal consequences to the conversation. I'd brought nothing with me except my purse and a folder containing the evidence Martin had gathered. No housewarming gift. They'd already taken quite enough from me. The house was quiet sunlight streaming through the large windows. I walked through the rooms one last time, noting additional furniture that had been delivered since my last visit. A dining table and chairs, more boxes in the kitchen artwork, leaning against the walls, waiting to be hung. They'd been busy preparing their fraudulent nest. At 11:15, a moving truck pulled into the driveway. I watched from an upstairs window as two movers began unloading boxes. At 11:40, a black SUV pulled up, James's car. I recognized it from their visits to my home. I moved to the living room and sat in an armchair facing the front door, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. Through the window I could see Stephanie and James approaching the front door, their faces animated with excitement. Stephanie was gesturing toward the upper windows, pointing out features of their new home. James had his arm around her waist, pulling her close as he unlocked the door. "Can you believe this is ours?" I heard Stephanie say as the door swung open. "I still can't believe we pulled this off." They stepped into the foyer, James setting down a small box he'd been carrying. Neither noticed me at first, too busy taking in their surroundings with proprietary delight. "Ahem!" I cleared my throat. They both jumped spinning toward the sound, their expressions transformed from shock to horror in an instant. "Mom!" Stephanie gasped, her face draining of color. "What are you doing here? How did you—" "Oh, you didn't expect to see me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "That's strange considering this house is in my name." James recovered first, stepping slightly in front of Stephanie. "Norma, this is a surprise. We were going to tell you everything once we were settled." "Were you— How considerate." I opened the folder in my lap. "Tell me, what exactly were you going to say? That you forged my signature? That you committed identity theft and fraud? That you've indebted me for $750,000 without my knowledge or consent?" "It's not like that," Stephanie began, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she'd used as a teenager when caught in a lie. "We were going to make all the payments. You'd never have had to pay a cent." "Really? And if you lost your jobs, if the payments became too much, what then?" "That wouldn't happen," James interjected. "I've got a promotion coming and this neighborhood is appreciating rapidly. In a few years we could refinance based on the equity alone." "So financial magic would save you?" I nodded as if considering this reasonable. "And what about this come?" I held up the printout about selling my house. "Were you also planning to explain why you were researching how to sell my home after I die?" Stephanie's eyes widened. "You went through our things. You had no right." The absurdity of her indignation might have been comical under different circumstances. "No right? You stole my identity, forged my signature, and indebted me for most of $1 million, but I had no right to look in a box in a house that is legally speaking mine." James attempted a different approach, his sales training evident in the smooth shift of his tone. "Norma, I understand you're upset. We should have been upfront with you. But we did this because we knew you wouldn't miss the money. You've got your house free and clear your retirement accounts. We're just getting started in life, and housing prices are impossible for our generation." "So you felt entitled to commit fraud because you wanted something you couldn't afford?" I shook my head. "That's not how the world works. That's not how trust works." Mom, Stephanie's voice broke, tears welling in her eyes. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but we're family. You wouldn't send your own daughter to jail, would you? The tears, the appeal to family. These were her usual tactics when in trouble from childhood through adulthood. But this time, they fell flat. That depends on you, I said, as a car door slammed outside. That's my attorney arriving now. We have two options here. Option 1, you sign the papers she's prepared, which include selling this house immediately, using the proceeds to pay off the fraudulent loan and attending financial counseling and therapy at your expense. Option 2, I file a police report today and you take your chances with the criminal justice system. Jennifer entered without knocking. We'd arranged this in advance. Her presence added gravity to the situation, her briefcase and professional demeanor, a stark contrast to Stephanie's tearful manipulation and James's smooth talking. You can't be serious, James said, looking between Jennifer and me. This will ruin us, our credit, our reputations. You should have considered that before committing multiple felonies, Jennifer replied coolly, opening her briefcase on the dining table. Mrs. Williams has been more than generous in offering you a private resolution. I advised her to go directly to the authorities. Stephanie sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. I can't believe this is happening. Mom, please, we'll figure something out. These are the papers, Jennifer said, laying out several documents. They include an admission of the fraud, an agreement to list this house for sale immediately, and a payment plan for any shortfall between the sale price and the loan amount. They also require weekly therapy sessions for a minimum of 1 year financial counseling and full financial transparency with Mrs. Williams going forward. James scanned the documents, his jaw tightening. And if we refuse, then I call the police from this phone, I said, holding up my cell. The detective is already familiar with the case. He's waiting for my call. You'd do that to your own daughter, your own grandchild. Stephanie blurted, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. I hadn't known she was pregnant. The revelation should have softened me, but instead it hardened my resolve. They had planned this betrayal while creating new life, while preparing to become parents themselves. Don't, I said sharply, don't use my grandchild as a shield for your crimes. If you're concerned about your child's well-being, then do the right thing now. Take responsibility for your actions. We'll need time to think, James began, but Jennifer cut him off. The offer expires when I leave this house. Mrs. Williams has been more than accommodating given the circumstances. The next hour was tense with negotiations, tears, accusations, and finally signatures. Stephanie and James signed everything, their dreams of fraudulent luxury collapsing in real time. The movers, who had been bringing in boxes throughout this confrontation, were sent away, told there had been a change of plans. As Jennifer gathered the signed documents, Stephanie made one last appeal. Mom, where are we supposed to go? We've given up our apartment. We have nowhere to live. I'd anticipated this question and had already decided on my answer. You can stay with me for 2 weeks while you find a new place. After that, you're on your own. With you? James looked horrified. After all this, yes, I said firmly, because unlike you, I don't abandon family in a crisis, even when they've created that crisis themselves. But there will be rules, and there will be boundaries, and there will be consequences for what you've done. As they left to follow the moving truck back to my house, I remained behind with Jennifer, looking around at the house that might have been my financial ruin. You're handling this with remarkable grace, Jennifer observed. Many in your position would have chosen a more punitive approach. They're still my family, I replied, though the words felt strange in my mouth. But they'll never be trusted the same way again. That's punishment enough, I think. As I locked the door to the house that was briefly technically mine, I wondered if trust once shattered could ever truly be repaired, or if, like a broken mirror, it could be pieced back together, but would always show the cracks of what had happened. Watching Stephanie and James move into my spare bedroom was surreal. These were the same people who hours earlier had been poised to begin a life of luxury, built on deceit. Now they carried duffel bags up the stairs of the modest home they'd been so eager to leave behind. "The real estate agent will list the house on Monday," Jennifer had assured me before leaving. "Given the neighborhood and current market, it should sell quickly. The proceeds will go directly to paying off the loan in your name." That night, dinner was a silent affair. Stephanie pushed food around her plate while James checked his phone repeatedly, as if hoping for a message that would magically solve their problems. I thought about all the family dinners we'd shared in this kitchen, birthday celebrations, Thanksgiving turkeys carved by Frank Sunday roasts after church. How had we gone from those warm gatherings to this Arctic standoff? "How far along are you?" I finally asked Stephanie, nodding toward her stomach. 10 weeks, she replied, voice barely above a whisper. "We were going to tell you once we were past the first trimester." "After you were settled in the new house," I added, and she flinched. "We thought we were doing the right thing," James interjected. "Setting up a stable home for our child, somewhere with good schools, safe streets." "By committing fraud." I shook my head. "What kind of example does that set? That it's okay to steal if you want something badly enough." "We weren't stealing." Stephanie's voice rose defensively. "We were going to make every payment. You'd never have had to pay a cent." "Until you couldn't make the payments," I countered. "Or until something went wrong. Then what the bank would come after me. The legal borrower." "Nothing would have gone wrong," James insisted. "I had it all worked out." "Like you've worked out all your other financial ventures?" I asked, and his face darkened. "That's unfair." "No, what's unfair is forging my signature and putting me in debt without my knowledge. What's unfair is planning to sell my home after I die. What's unfair is betraying the trust of someone who has only ever wanted the best for you." Stephanie started crying again, but this time I didn't soften. Tears had been her go-to response whenever she faced consequences from childhood timeouts to adult confrontations. I'd always relented, always comforted. Not this time. "The therapist Jennifer recommended has an opening next Tuesday," I said, passing a card across the table. "Your first financial counseling session is Thursday. I expect you both to attend." "We don't need therapy," James scoffed. "We made a mistake, we're fixing it. End of story." "It's not optional," I replied firmly. "It's part of our agreement. Unless you'd prefer I call Detective Harmon." The threat worked. They agreed to the appointments, retreating to the guest room soon after whispering heatedly behind the closed door. Over the next few days, an uneasy routine developed. Stephanie and James left early for work, returning late, minimizing our interactions. I gave them space, using the time to process my own feelings of betrayal and grief. Because that's what this was. A grief process. I was mourning the relationship I thought I had with my daughter, the trust I'd assumed was unbreakable. A week after the confrontation, the Colonial in Oak Ridge Estates received an offer. Slightly below asking price, but enough to cover the loan if James and Stephanie contributed some of their savings. They signed the acceptance papers without meeting my eyes, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. "We found an apartment," Stephanie announced the following evening. "It's not much, but it's what we can afford now." "When will you move?" I asked, relieved yet strangely sad. Despite everything, part of me had hoped for reconciliation, for heartfelt apologies, and genuine remorse. "This weekend," James replied. "The lease starts Friday." I nodded, unsure what to say. "Good luck. Be careful not to commit any more felonies." "Mom," Stephanie began hesitantly. "What about the baby? Will you still want to be involved?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course I will. This child is innocent in all this. My grandchild." I paused, then added firmly, "But things will be different going forward. I won't be sharing financial information. I won't be signing papers for you, and I'll need time to rebuild trust." "So you're punishing us indefinitely," James muttered. "No," I corrected him. "I'm protecting myself while giving you an opportunity to earn back trust. There's a difference." The day they moved out, Stephanie lingered in the doorway while James loaded their car. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Not just for the loan, but for everything. For thinking you wouldn't find out. For planning to sell your house someday. For not being the daughter you deserve." It was the first genuine apology she'd offered free from excuses or deflections. "I'm sorry too," I replied. "Sorry that you felt this was your only option. Sorry that I didn't raise you to make better choices." She reached for a hug, and I allowed it, though I remained stiff in her embrace. Healing would take time, months, maybe years. Perhaps some fractures would never fully mend. As their car pulled away, I felt lighter, as if a weight I'd been carrying had shifted, not disappeared, but transformed into something I could manage, something I could learn from. I went inside and called the bank where I'd kept accounts for 40 years. "I'd like to change all my passwords and security questions," I told the representative, "and I want to set up alerts for any unusual activity." It was a small step toward reclaiming my financial security, toward establishing the boundaries I should have maintained all along, toward becoming a wiser, more cautious version of myself, one who could love without being blind to reality. 6 months passed, seasons changing outside my kitchen window. The maple tree Frank had planted when Stephanie was born shed its leaves standing bare against November skies. Inside, I was undergoing my own transformation. The house in Oak Ridge Estates sold quickly, as Jennifer had predicted. The new owners, a doctor and her husband with 3 young children, would make better memories there than my daughter and son-in-law ever would have. Stephanie and James moved into their apartment, a 2-bedroom, in a decent neighborhood. Not luxurious, but clean and safe. They attended their therapy sessions, though James initially went grudgingly. Their financial counselor reported progress. They were living within their means for perhaps the first time in their marriage. I joined a support group for victims of financial fraud, surprised to find how many others had experienced betrayal by family members. "It's more common than you think," the facilitator told us. "Money and family create powerful, complicated dynamics." Listening to others' stories helped me process my own. Some had chosen to cut off contact with the relatives who'd betrayed them. Others had found paths to forgiveness. I was somewhere in between, maintaining careful contact while establishing firm boundaries. Stephanie called weekly, our conversations gradually becoming less strained. She shared updates about the pregnancy, her work at the hospital, the financial lessons she was learning. I listened, offered limited advice when asked, but kept parts of myself in reserve. Trust, once broken, returns, slowly like spring after a harsh winter. James found a job at a smaller financial firm, one with more oversight and less pressure to produce immediate results. His therapist reported that he was working through entitlement issues and impulsive decision-making patterns. I hoped for my grandchild's sake that the changes were genuine and lasting. In December, Stephanie gave birth to a baby girl named Laura, after Frank's mother. Holding my granddaughter in the hospital, I felt love rush through me, pure, uncomplicated love for this innocent new life. Looking up at Stephanie's exhausted, hopeful face, I saw glimpses of the daughter I'd raised, the one who'd existed before greed and poor choices led her astray. "She's beautiful," I whispered, stroking Laura's tiny cheek. "She has your eyes. And Dad's chin," Stephanie added softly. "Do you think he would have forgiven us for what we did?" I considered the question carefully. "Your father believed in second chances," I said finally. "But he also believed in earning those chances through actions, not just words. He'd be watching to see if you've learned from this." Stephanie nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "We have Mom. I know you may never fully trust us again, but we're trying to be better. For Laura, for you, for ourselves. I visited them weekly after Laura came home bringing home-cooked meals and baby clothes, offering to watch the baby so Stephanie could shower or nap. Our relationship was evolving into something new, not the blind trust of before, but perhaps something healthier with clearer boundaries and more honest communication. James and I maintained a polite distance, civil, but not close. I doubted we would ever fully repair our relationship, but for Laura's sake, we found a way to coexist peacefully. He seemed humbled by fatherhood, by the reality of truly being responsible for another life. One evening as I was leaving their apartment after visiting Laura, Stephanie walked me to my car. "The therapist asked me something interesting yesterday," she said. "She asked if I ever wondered why we thought we needed that big house, all those things." "And what did you answer?" I asked, curious. "That we were trying to skip steps. Everyone around us seemed to have so much, and we wanted it too without waiting, without earning it." She looked up at the stars. "But now I'm thinking we didn't need any of it. This apartment is enough. Our jobs are enough. Having Laura and each other and you, that's what matters." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "That's a valuable lesson. I just wish it hadn't come at such a high cost." "Me too," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "No." I shook my head. "Don't live for my forgiveness. Live to be the kind of person your daughter can be proud of. Break this cycle so Laura grows up understanding that happiness doesn't come from things, and that integrity matters more than appearances." As I drove home to my modest house, the one Frank and I had filled with love and memories, I reflected on how this painful chapter had changed me. I'd learned to set boundaries, to question more, to protect myself without closing off my heart. I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. The betrayal still hurt. There were days when anger resurfaced, when I wondered how my own child could have deceived me so thoroughly. But there were also moments of grace, of connection, of cautious hope for the future. I sometimes wonder what my late husband would have done in my situation. But then I realized that true strength isn't about what others would do. It's about finding the courage to protect yourself while still keeping your heart open enough to heal. Isn't that what we're all trying to learn in this complicated journey we call life? If you've experienced betrayal by someone you loved, know that healing is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. Leave a comment sharing your story or how you found your way forward. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories of resilience and recovery, and like this video if you believe in second chances, with proper boundaries, of course. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful experiences.